Hello everyone, my name is Darren and today I'm going to talk about the potential future of the European Union and how we can resolve its problems. So first of all, I'm going to provide some background information about the European Union. The EU, or more commonly referred to as the European Union, is an international organization that is currently comprising 28 European countries, which was established in 1993. The countries that are participating in this organization are all considered to be allies and are ready to help each other both militarily and economically. They all use common security, economic, and social policies, and most of the members countries use the common currency, which is the euro, and the citizens of the member countries can travel to and live in any of the member countries without any visa requirements. So now all the following countries that I'm going to list are part of the Union: Austria, Belgium, Bulgaria, Croatia, Cyprus, Czech Republic, Denmark, Estonia, Finland, France, Germany, Greece, Hungary, Ireland, Italy, Latvia, Lithuania, Luxembourg, Malta, Netherlands, Poland, Portugal, Romania, Slovakia, Slovenia, Spain, Sweden, and the United Kingdom. Some countries that are current and might join in the future are Turkey, Serbia, Montenegro, Macedonia, and Albania. So let's talk about why the EU was created. The European Union is set up mainly with the aim of ending the frequent and bloody wars between the neighbors, which culminated in the Second World War. The six founding countries are Belgium, France, Germany, Italy, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands. Additionally, some other reasons for starting such an organization include enhancing European political and economic integration by creating a single currency, which is the euro, starting to use a unified foreign and security policy, having common citizenship rights, and advancing cooperation in the areas of immigration, asylum, and judicial affairs. However, I also personally believe that there's another very important reason why the Europeans created such an organization. I believe that since the end of the World War, the United States and the Eastern powers like Russia and China started to really control the economy of the world and become very powerful globally. And because the Europeans wanted to still be economically independent, not dependent on such powers, they decided to be economically connected with each other. Now I want to touch on important recent events, the Greek economic crisis, because this is the perfect case to prove that these countries in the Union do help each other. So to summarize this event, in 2008, the world's worst financial crisis in almost 80 years caused a global recession. Many European countries had huge government debts, but Greece was worst affected. With a spiraling spending deficit, it had borrowed much more money than it was able to make in revenue through taxes. In 2010, the country revealed its sky-high deficit and was frozen out of bond markets. Greece asked for financial rescue by the European Union and International Monetary Fund. Bailouts, emergency loans aimed at saving sinking economies began in 2010. Greece received 3 successive packages totaling about 289,000 euros, but they came with the price of drastic austerity measures. At the height of the crisis, some worried that the Eurozone, the 19 countries that shared the euro, would collapse alongside Greece. In conclusion, we see that other EU members tried to help out each other with financial aid to help them get out of a huge, very important crisis. So what's currently expecting the EU? So I want to start off with the Brexit. As most of you are already aware, in 2016 the UK held a referendum on whether they will leave the EU, and the referendum proved that they are in favor of leaving. They're scheduled to completely leave the EU in the year 2019. This might have very negative effects on the EU because, first of all, the idea of one of the biggest economies of Europe leaving the Union is quite devastating. And additionally, if they leave, the member countries will not be able to trade freely with them, which is also negative for both sides because UK has tons of available products but also buys a ton from the EU as well. One other negative factor is that other members might also follow the UK, a very influential regional power, footsteps, and leave the EU. Another possible threat to the EU is that features the idea of another economic crisis. If a crisis like in 2008 one occurs again in the future, the EU might not be able to survive economically because they already couldn't get their huge amount of money that they loaned out to Greece. And if something like this happens again, even more countries might economically collapse and therefore would need to borrow money from the EU that they will probably not be able to pay back later on. Also in the future, some new countries might join into the Union like Turkey, Iceland, Serbia, Montenegro, Macedonia, and Albania. This might be both positive and negative because some of these countries might end up being a huge liability just like Greece, even in a possible case of a small economic crisis, or there might be a huge economic powerhouses once they join. So, first of all, how will the European Union stop Brexit? I believe that the EU needs to offer something to them in order to convince them. Perhaps something like a privilege in terms of trade with the other members, or a policy that limits the amount of immigrants coming into their country. Because one of the main reasons why they wanted to leave was because they didn't want immigrants from the developing European countries. But like I said, if the EU offers something, they might change their mind, and this is possible because there might be another referendum that could be held if the parliament votes withdrawal agreements. If the withdrawal agreement passes, another referendum will definitely be held. So, like stated before, another problem that the EU might face in the future is another economic crisis, and I am going to be honest with you. If the EU wants to be affected at a minimum by another global crisis, they will have two options. They can either limit the amount of loanable money to a member country, or simply kick those countries out. Those countries specifically that might be deeply affected by such a crisis and might want to borrow some money from the EU. I know that this kind of sounds silly, but believe me, these are the only ways. In the last economic crisis, these members that were deeply affected by it and borrowed a huge amount of money from the Union are as follows: Greece, Ireland, Italy, and Spain. So, when it comes to new members in the future, there are also some possible problems that might occur. For example, they might become a liability like Greece in crisis times, but yet some of them may turn out to be great because they might provide many advantages economically. First, let's take a look at these possible members. They include, like I said before, Albania, Bosnia, Croatia, Iceland, Macedonia, Montenegro, Serbia, and Turkey. For example, a country like Iceland will not be a liability due to its very small population of 338,000. However, a country like Macedonia or Serbia might become a liability due to their economy not being at their best. Turkey is also a very interesting one because its economy is larger than most of the EU members already, but they also have 4 million Syrian refugees in their country, which might be a problem for the EU. To summarize, they need to evaluate these countries and try to see which ones can help them out economically and which ones might become a liability during a time of crisis. I also want to talk about how Europe might promote peace all around the world and the continent, because at the end of the day, promoting peace was a main reason why this union was established. I believe that if all of the member countries synthesize the idea of everybody being equal, despite their race, gender, and religion, to children throughout their schools, there will definitely be less violence throughout the continent. But other than that, the EU is really doing everything that it can to promote peace, not just in Europe, but all around the world by partnering up with many important organizations such as the United Nations, the African Union, and the NATO. If they keep doing it, they will be just fine. So throughout this presentation, I provided 3 solutions to the current problems of the EU. Now let's get to the important question though. Will the European Union survive, thrive, strengthen, expand, or fragment? I believe that the EU will fragment because the continent of Europe has always been divided, and I believe that it will always stay like that. Eventually a huge conflict will occur again, just like it did 60 years ago and in the continent, and that's why the Union will someday be disassembled. This is supported by a very famous saying by George Santayana: history repeats itself. Additionally, especially after the Second World War, the power balance in the globe changed rapidly and is still changing to this day. American and Chinese economies have already become bigger and more controlling economies compared to Europe. And Indian, Brazilian, and Japanese economies are rapidly growing and soon expected to surpass the combined economies of the EU members. This tells us the major powers outside of Europe can easily trigger an economic crisis in Europe by not selling any products to the Europeans. It's that simple. Because of these reasons, I believe that the Europeans should stick together with each other more than ever. But yet, I personally believe that they won't make it, and their union will disassemble perhaps in the upcoming decades. This is my bibliography, and thank you for listening.